have a guest who's going to tell us more about how to plan your website. I'm in the web design space myself, and I was really excited to come across this really inspirational book by Steve Woody. I knew Steve already, and we chatted a few times, but when I saw his book, I thought, look, this looks really useful. I should be writing a book like this. But when I went through it, I was really blown away with the quality of information. And so I've asked Steve on today to tell us more about how he came to write his book and what it can do for readers and people out there, and how he's supporting people building their websites. So welcome, Steve. Thanks for coming on board.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
That's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. So you run a business called Online Mastery, and you help businesses to get online and attract new customers. Tell us more about the business and also where the need for the book came from.
That's a great question. So the company was started, actually I started it a few years ago out of an identity crisis. I had another business. I used to print t-shirts, and with my partner at the time, we separated and I needed to do something. And I'd built websites as a hobby. I'd done it for myself, and we sort of offered it as a package in part of that business, but I wasn't a developer as such. And so when I went through that identity crisis back in 2011, I was like, I need to do something. And so I kind of just fully immersed myself, and I said, I'm going to do one thing. What's it going to be? And I said, websites. So I started looking at everything. I mean, I didn't know where to start. So I would build websites from scratch. I started looking at content management systems like WordPress, Joomla, Drupal. And I realized that people will always tell you to use what they use. Like if you go to a WordPress developer or a website developer that uses WordPress, they'll say you should use WordPress. If you go to someone who uses Joomla, they'll tell you to use Joomla. If you go to someone who uses Twitter Bootstrap, they'll tell you to use that, because they obviously want your business and they know what to do or what they use. So rather than looking at what you need, they'll look at what it works for them, and they'll advise you on what would work in that instance. And I thought, I don't want to do that. I want to look at a broader range, and I want to look at all of the tools that are available and what best would serve you in your industry or in whatever it is that you're doing. And so that kind of gave me this broader scope, so to speak. And I settled in WordPress, and I started custom building at first, HTML, PHP, CSS, learned all of that. And then I got into, and people would say, you should use WordPress. And I was like, no, I was really against it. And then someone turned around to me once and said, using a well-built WordPress theme is the equivalent of 10,000 hours of code. And it kind of hit me, and I was like, wow, do I want to spend this amount of time? I mean, I love coding, but it wasn't profitable in that sense. Unless you're coding applications or you're doing something that's going to make a difference, general coding for building a web page for a business, for a product or service, it's not profitable in that sense. Not really. There's quicker and easier ways to do it, in my opinion.
For
So
sure.
I started looking at,
can help you.
yeah, I started looking at what to do. I started looking at what to do and how best to serve. And I fell into a trap for a long time of working where there are people in the world, in other countries in the world, where cost of living is a lot cheaper. And as a result, they can undercut the market and they can offer a service a lot cheaper than what I can. Living in the UK, especially living in London, I've got overheads to consider. So I was fighting for scraps on some of these outsourcing websites. And it was really at that point, it was that moment when I stopped and said, what can I do different? You know, how can I be different so that I'm not competing with everybody else? And I looked at the one thing that was the biggest sort of stumbling block for most business owners, and that was strategy. And so that was when I sort of twisted, and I sort of moved away from development. I moved away from design. I moved away from building websites and more into teaching people what they need and planning and strategy and what to do before they build a website. And so that was really the whole journey that brought along the concept of the book.
Fantastic. And so tell us a little more about the book. I've been reading through myself, but it's certainly the first chapter of strategy, I think. What else does it talk people through?
Well, I sort of started off because I wanted to create a journey. See, I for a long time I struggled with saying, you know, I mean, I say I had an identity crisis. I kind of had another one when I see a lot of people that say, oh, I'm a WordPress developer. And I mean, I know I mentioned it a while ago, but technically there's no such thing. It doesn't exist. It's just you're either a developer or you're not. You know, you either work in WordPress or you don't, but there's no such thing as an actual WordPress developer. I mean, if anything, they're a glorified button pusher. And so, you know, if you can install a theme and plugin, people are calling themselves developers, and there's a real mismatch at the moment with quality, with people that are genuinely good at what they do. You know, if someone is a developer, they know code, but there are a lot of people that are calling themselves developers and they don't know code. And so because of the way technology helps us nowadays, there's this. And so for me, it was really about the strategy. Obviously, going back to the beginning is what you need to do. But I was like, well, when people said, what do you do? I was like, I build websites. I'm a website developer. It was just an easy answer. It's like when someone says, where do you live? You know, you tell them the biggest city nearest to you because it's easier. And so for me, I wasn't a website developer, but I was telling people I was, and it didn't feel right. So I started to look at the areas that I worked in.
And on that note, design isn't quite right either. So website design is probably a more accessible term, but yet it leans more on making a pretty site. And often, you know, in the industry, a designer wouldn't ever touch code or implement. They might in Photoshop. Yeah.
Exactly. I can't design. I'm not good at design. And if you're a developer and you're in code, you're analytical. Your mind thinks in a very logical sequence. If you're a designer, you need to be very creative. It's a completely different type of thinking. And if you're good at one, you might be okay at both. But the chances are, for you to be a master in one, you can't always be a master in both. You know, you pick one. And so designers and developers, for someone that says they do both, they may be able to do both, but they won't be able to do both to the level that, you know, that level that I expect and that I demand for myself. So for me, it was kind of like, you need two people. You need a developer and a designer. So I was like, right, I'm not a designer, I'm not a developer, what am I? And so I sort of labeled myself as, I fell into my comfort zone was the customer journey. I'm a UX designer. I'm all about the user experience. And so I'm now a user experience strategist. That's what I do. I create the journeys for the users to go through. And so when I looked at my book, and obviously taking into account what I've just said, I need to make sure that when people come to my book, they go through a journey. So there was an infographic, which was 10 steps. And these are the 10 things that over the years I found, these 10 things, you need these to build a website. However you look at it, whatever you do, if you don't have these 10 elements, you won't be successful. And so it was kind of like, how can I break these down and make them really simple so people just get it? And then how can I, because you can go so deep. And I mean, there are more than 10 things, obviously, but it was the 10 most important things that you need to be successful. And then how can I break that down so it's easy, but then also go into it so people can get it, because it's overwhelming sometimes. You know, the subject can be daunting, especially to someone who's not tech savvy.
And so that's what I tell people expect that they can just go and see one person to do their website. And as you've pointed out, you've got design, development, but also there are other aspects like content, copywriting, image selection.
So many. Exactly. And so that's what I did. I looked at what are the 10 main areas, and they become the 10 chapters of my book. So chapter 1, as you've already mentioned, strategy, which was like, that to me is like, there's no point building a website if you don't know what it is that you need. You know, if you're just, so many people say, oh, I want to build a website. And I say to them, first question is why? And they're like, oh, because I need a website. Why? Oh, because Uncle Bob said I needed one. It's not good enough reason. Why do you need a website? And when they actually get down to the core of it, a lot of the time they don't know. People just think they need a website. But I know people that don't have a website who make a lot of money by not having a website. I know people that have only got a YouTube channel and they make millions a year purely off of royalties and advertising in YouTube. They have no website. So it's, yes, websites are important, but you need to understand your market. And so I look at the strategy behind what you're doing, why you're doing it, and who you're doing it for. That's a free chapter. I give that away because I think everybody should be able to read that, regardless whether they buy the book or not.
For sure.
Then it was a case of what are the 10 things. So
having a business case before you even start the website's important. Otherwise, there's no measure of success in working with a developer. So if I come to you and say I want a website, and I'm sort of thinking, well, you know, I'm going to make millions of dollars because I've got this plan with the website, but don't really go into that with you, and then, you know, that doesn't actually fit with your knowledge of reality, that's a disastrous project for both parties. So
Exactly.
unless you can work out, look, why are we doing this? What's the business upside? How does it fit into my company rather than just my kind of fantasy about a website? Then you can start making informed decisions as to, well, how many resources should we put into this? Who needs to be involved? Are there other partners? Are there other ways of doing it?
Absolutely. And one of the first things I ask people is, what's your exit strategy? And
Mm-hmm.
it's such a weird question that throws people, because they're like, I'm starting out. And I'm like, so what's your exit strategy? Like, the first thing you need to know in your business is, how are you going to leave? And people are like, well, I'm not thinking about that yet. And I turn around to them and I always say, one day you will exit your business. You know, it's either going to be on the airport because you're going to your island, or it's going to be in a coffin. And it's a bit harsh, but one way or the other, you will exit your business. So it makes sense, because when you start planning that from the start, you start to build in systems, and you
Mm-hmm.
start to do things that don't rely on you, because you're not then the linchpin that holds everything together.
Mm-hmm.
See, when I say I do customer user experience, that's my focus. I also do a lot of automation. And what I look to do is take business owners out of their business so they can work on it rather than in it. So you can put systems in place, and it's not about creating something and then going and living on a beach and it makes you money for the rest of your life. That's bullshit. That doesn't exist. It's about creating systems that you can use with your business to help you, so that you're not focused on, oh, I've got to send these emails out, because they're automatically going out. So you can focus on, oh, I need to follow up with these people and actually have a conversation with them, as opposed to worry about, did this person get this message, or did that person get that memo? Automate the simple tasks so that you can focus on the key things that are going to make a difference in your business.
Mm.
And that's really all I talk about is about the user experience and automation, and how you can merge the two to create a great experience for people. And
That's
so
right. That's where a website often starts getting valuable, is that it can start to replicate tasks that we hate doing. You know, the phone call or email you get 20 times a week asking the same question. You know, record
wouldn't it be nice to have
a
hand
great
response,
video
point
explaining
someone to a
it.
knowledge base?
Yeah. So if people start to look at how a website can actually be reducing staff time and planning with
Exactly.
that, there's huge profits in that. But people tend to focus on just the brochure style site that actually has very limited ROI for most businesses.
Exactly. And I mean, let's not forget, I mean, a website is online as long as you've got a good host. A website is online 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. You know, it's constantly connected to the internet. So it makes sense. And because it's global and anybody can view it, it makes sense to do the one task that every business needs. Like, if we're in business, I don't care what our personal values are, or, you know, what we want to do as an individual. A business, very simply, at its core, needs to be profitable. That's
Mm.
it. If it's not profitable, it's not a business, it's a hobby. So if you've got a business, it needs to be profitable. The only way you can be profitable is to sell something. If it's a service or product, whatever it is, you need to sell value. You know, you need to solve someone's problem, you need to sell value. And the only way you can sell something to someone is if you know who wants to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I know I'm sort of dumbing this right down, but the whole purpose is you need to build a list of interested people that want to buy your product and service. So the website, its main goal, its main task should be to capture leads, to build an audience. It's on 24 hours a day. If anything, it should just be a bucket that people can just put in their name and email address, that you can collect, that you can sift through and choose and pick out who you want. And if you want to be a little bit more clever, you can start to have questionnaires, and you can start to pre-filter people before you connect with them. You know, my wife does it before she works with someone. She has a series of questionnaires, and depending on what they answer depends on the next question, and takes them through a whole series. So by the time she actually comes to talk to them, she's not wasting her time. She
For
knows that
sure.
they're pre-vetted and they're the right person for her. So it's
And
about
historically,
using
we would have had that
those.
conversation on the phone with every customer, and you know, sort of spend 10 minutes, and half of them would turn out to be not suitable, and you'd quickly realize, oh, look, you should be going to
That's a
that
lot
shop
of
down
time.
the road. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's all about, and look, I mean, you don't know until you start talking to somebody. You don't know, but what I've created now is, I mean, people don't see what I've created. It's like an iceberg. People just see the tip of it. They don't see what's behind the surface. I'm gathering so much intelligence and so much data around my target audience, that I have everything I could possibly need to give them a very, very unique, specific. I know their problems before they know them themselves, and I know the solution they need, and I can offer them the solution before they even know they need it. That is so valuable because I can stop potential problems from occurring, and I can see that because of the data that I'm gathering, and I have it all available to me. I have screens that I can see, and I'm like, right, this person's here, this person's there. Okay, this person hasn't done this, and I can see everything. And so it's by creating the systems that allow me to see that.
So that's that really points to a bit of a difference in how you're using the technology versus how the average business owner thinks they should be using online technology. And you're listening more than you're talking. So you're putting a message out there, but in many ways the gold is in what you hear, not what you say. And you know,
well, it's about practicing what you preach. You know, I could tell you what to do, and I've been doing this for years for clients. I've been telling clients what to do, and I've been helping them, but I hadn't done it for myself. And so now in the last sort of 12 months, I've actually took a step back and said, no more clients. I sort of kept a few retainers. I let all my paid work go, and I focused purely on writing a book. I got the book finished. I've been writing a book for 2 years. It's been an ongoing project. And in the last 6 months, published a book. The book went massive success. And because I managed to hook it into my personal story, which managed to get me into a lot of news outlets and get me a lot of publications in sort of the press and the media and things, that helped to boost the book. But the book itself was never, I mean, it was the outcome of the book was really to extend myself so that I can, you know, I don't have to explain myself. People can read, I can give someone a copy of the book, they can read the book. It saves me having that conversation with people. You know, if someone hasn't got the budget, they can read the book. If someone, you know, if I'm busy and haven't got the time, they can read the book. So it gives people that opportunity of still progressing even if I'm not available. And the thing with the book, yeah, I can see on your screen now. The thing with the book is that there's a workbook that goes with it. And this was really the single greatest thing that I could have done, because the book itself is there's a lot of theory, and it's a lot of talking people through the 10 steps. Like I said, there's an infographic which talks through 10 steps, and then and the 10 steps are the 10 chapters. So once they understand that and they read the book, there's then a workbook, and the workbook is a step-by-step guide that if people follow the series of questions, and as you can see, there's a free PDF version of the workbook there, where if people download that and they follow it, there's a series of questions. If they fill in all of those questions around all 10 chapters, you will have a plan for your website. You'll have a strategy. You'll have a strategic document that you can give to a designer, that you can give to a developer, that you can use yourself as a blueprint to build your website. And that's what it's all about. It's about having that starting point, because most people don't put in the groundwork. And it's like you wouldn't build a house without a blueprint.
Then there's no way to assess the success of the project. It's just so common that people sort of dive in with this idea for a site. They don't really know what the objectives are.
Exactly.
And it ends up becoming, how can I get a website, or any website almost, for the minimum amount of money, but forgetting that they actually are only doing it to get an outcome, whether it's for their business or, you know, some other project or objective.
And because it is so easy to build a website, people just assume that, oh, I should just be building a website. But the thing is, it's like most people don't need a website. Most people need to actually take a step back and look at what they're doing and why they're doing it. You know, a lot of people, they're doing it for the wrong reasons, as you just stated. So it's about using it to boost the business. It's an asset. It's a tool. Your website is a tool, and it's not a cost. This is a real misconception when people say, oh, I've got to spend this on my website. My website's going to cost this, it's going to cost that. Your website is not a cost. It's like stocks and shares. It's an investment. You put money into your website, money comes out. It's like advertising. You wouldn't pay for advertising if it didn't give you a return, because it would be a waste. Why are you paying for it otherwise? Unless you're doing it for like brand awareness. But if you're putting money into advertising, for every pound or dollar that you put in, you want to get more out. You want to get a return on your investment.
Measure it as well, and know how much did come.
Exactly.
One of the
well, your website's the same.
Stuff is you can track it.
Exactly. Your website's the same. It's an investment, and you need to get a return on that. So for whatever, you know, if I'm going to spend 50 hours building a website, then I want to make sure it's going to give me more time back. You know, if I'm going to spend £1,000 on a website, then I want to make sure it's going to give me more money back. Otherwise, what's the point of me doing it?
Yeah,
So
and you
you've
actually
got to know what
shouldn't
your
do it.
outcome is.
Otherwise, it's a bad choice to do it unless you can
Exactly.
achieve a
Yeah, I
return.
mean, I wouldn't if one of the first things I do in a discovery session when I talk to people, because I still talk to people and they say, "Oh, can you build me a website?" I'm saying, "Let's have a talk." If someone tells me they've got a $10 product and I look at their target audience and they could potentially sell, let's just say 1,000 product. Let's keep it really simple. Let's say it's a dollar product, and they're going to sell 10,000 at most, right? Their income is capped at about $10,000. Right, I'm not going to charge someone $30,000 to build a website that's only going to generate them $10,000 in revenue. It's not worth it for them. I could do it and take the money, that's fine. But I have to look at, why are you doing this? Is it actually worth doing? And for that, and it's a bitter pill to swallow. When you turn around to someone and say, look, you don't really have a good business idea, or that's not really going to work, or I wouldn't do that, most people will probably do it anyway because they're stubborn. But I don't want to be the person that builds it and then you turn around and go, oh, it doesn't work. Oh, it's because Steve's shit. I'm like, it's not because I'm shit. It's because, well, it is, because if I'd have done the research at the beginning, I could have told you this wouldn't have worked. And I can't work with something that's not going to be successful. I don't want to work with something that's not going to be successful. So it's
Terrific.
important, I think, to understand that.
Yeah. Now, with the monitoring you were talking about, you're also involved in another really interesting project, which was pretty much how I met you. I think you work on a plugin which connects WordPress, which is the world's most popular content management system, to Infusionsoft, which is one of the leading CRMs. So it's a CMS to CRM sync tool, and now I believe it also does some other CRMs like ActiveCampaign. But basically, that gets your website to talk to your customer database and sort of automation tool, doesn't it? Can you tell us a bit more about WP Fusion?
This actually was born last year. Actually, this week is the second. It's our second year. So we had our birthday for the plugin last week.
Wow,
And yeah, it's been crazy because it was actually created. See, as I said before, I look for the customer experience and what I can do and how I can use systems and tools to make things easier. So when people go through the workbook, there's a PDF workbook they can download, but there's also an online workbook. And in the online workbook, when people start a chapter, so you've got to imagine there's all these topics and all these chapters and all these lessons they can go through. When they start a lesson, I wanted a way of saying, how do I know where they are in the process? How can I monitor that? So I wanted a way, and in Infusionsoft, the CRM, and all a CRM is, it's a game. That's the best way to look at it, is it's a game. You start off, to start the game, like normally in an arcade machine, you have to put a quarter in. Well, in this, you have to get an email address. As soon as you get an email address, the game begins. You have to fill in as many of the blanks as you can. That's it. I do the game. So for me, I was like, how can I start capturing this information of people going through my workbook and importing it into the CRM? And there were systems out there, but they were clunky or they were buggy, and some worked, some didn't. And so we set out, I actually hired a developer to build it for me personally. And we realized that so many people needed it that we opened it up to the public. It's called WP Fusion. And what it does is it connects, as you rightly said, the CRM to the CMS. So when someone's on your website, they can actually, we can monitor what they're doing, and we can report back to the CRM, and we can fill in details. For example, when you're on my website, if you're logged into my website and you're going through the workbook, I know exactly what chapter you're on. I know what section of the chapter you're on. And I can add tags, and a tag is like a sticky note. So all we do is we add a tag onto your account, like a sticky note, and says, you've started chapter 1. Now, if you start chapter 1 but don't finish chapter 1, I can start sending you emails after 3 days, 4 days, 12 days, 21 days, 30 days, saying, hey, I can see you started this, but you haven't yet finished it. And I can automate that entire process to hold you accountable, to make sure that you finish it. After 30 days, I might schedule a call so that I can ring you up and kick your ass and find out why you've not finished it yet. But it's just a really good tool and system. But not only that, in terms of doing that, what it also does is it takes all of the tags that are in the CRM system, it pushes them across to WordPress, and then you can actually lock pages based on tags. So for example, I could add a tag when you purchase something. So when you purchase my workbook, you get a tag. You can't access the workbook if you haven't got the tag, it's locked. So we're actually creating like a membership area.
Right.
So there's so much you can do. We can sync data from one platform to the other so that a user can go in and update their own information. Because at the moment, if you want to update your CRM, you need to physically go in there as the business owner and update it yourself. There's no way that the customer can really update the information. Not unless you use some clunky forms or buy some additional services that cost you like X amount per month. And we didn't want to do that. We just wanted to make it so that it's a one-off payment. You buy the plugin, you've got it, you own it. You don't need to worry about that. And then anything that you create on the front end of your website, it syncs across to your CRM. And that's basically what we do.
And it's worth mentioning that companies like Amazon, which have grown to billions of dollars in value, they've largely done it by this micro tracking and presenting us with relevant offers and giving us access to things that are appropriate for where we are in the process. So if I buy a book on paleo cooking, then it's going to remember I'm interested in paleo. So this gathering information about your customers and presenting them with what they're likely to want next, or what they're likely to want based on who they are and similar people, that is really the foundation of these really big industries and why they've managed to become so successful and profitable in spite of very low profit margins. And it really comes down to their ability to measure, doesn't it? And so listening and then responding with a customized solution to that specific customer.
Absolutely. You're 100%. You're spot on. And this is it. And the challenge that a lot of the bigger companies have is that they're not agile enough. They don't have the infrastructure and the systems to allow them to maneuver easily. They have to get an idea. They have to submit that idea to a team. That team has to sit in front of a board. That board then needs to take it to the developer. The developer has to write up a plan. That has to go to budget. Finance then has to approve it. And by the time they've actually done something, it's like the Titanic. By the time they've moved, they've already hit the iceberg. They've missed. Whereas as a small company, we can go in and we can just change something, done. New page, done. Add this, do that, change this. We can be so agile that we can actually come in and undercut these huge giants and take market share for being more customer centric, customer focused. And because we can give people a much better experience, because we can be a lot more focused, because we're not as big. It actually works in our favor. But it's by using what they're doing. It's by taking what they're doing, because what they're doing is right. They just have a long process to complete it. We can actually drastically reduce that time frame by using great systems.
And we've talked about, say, for example, your online workbook and how you're tracking that. And I know that's a very complex undertaking that will take a lot of effort to set up, but then eventually we'll give you this data, and you're sort of getting the returns on that now. But it can be very simple, can't it? It can be as simple as sending an email saying, hey, just checking which of these apply to you, and then giving them follow-up information based on their response. So it can be as simple as giving people a choice of 2 or 3 things that they might be more interested in hearing about, and then following up with some tailored information. So you can start out, it is best to start out simple. We all tend to get carried away with these things. You won't build Amazon overnight or on a tight budget, but the smallest and simplest business can benefit from first of all listening to your customers, whether it's face-to-face or online, and then responding with something that's tailored to them.
Absolutely. I mean, look, what I'm saying is more, and this is what I talk about a lot, is that I'm telling you where you can go, where you actually decide to go. Just having the knowledge and the awareness helps you, because then you can make better, more. You don't have to do what I'm telling you. I'm gonna. Is it all right to share my screen quickly?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So, if you can see this is just an example of this. This is actually my tracking that I'm using for my workbook. Now, it doesn't have to be this detailed, but you can see the people that purchase a digital workbook in a month.
Your screen's still black. Your screen's still black.
I'm really sorry. It says I'm sharing. Let me try that again. I thought that would be a clever way just to show you what I was doing. Yeah, I don't know if that's going to work. Let me try it one more time. See if that works.
It's just going black. Oh, there we go. There we go. Great.
So, for example, here, this is within the month. You can see how many people have purchased a workbook this month, and then every chapter of the book, I can see where people are within the workbook. And so it's you don't have to be this detailed, you don't have to be this orientated, but it really helps when you're trying to get a bird's eye view of your business, that you can actually pick here. If I want to look at strategy, for example, I can actually come in and I can actually focus specifically on strategy and look at where everybody is in the journey. And it's having this data. This is the importance about having the data. Okay, it's about being able to create the systems to create these things that serve you. You know, I mean, you don't need all of this. Of course, you can get by without it. But I'm not talking about building a website. I'm not interested in building a website. I'm interested in building a successful online presence. Okay, and that means that there are things to be successful. There are things that you need to do. And when you look at companies, look at WhatsApp. You know, Facebook built. They purchased WhatsApp for, I can't remember how many billion it was. It wasn't the algorithm, right? It wasn't. They could have built that. They have developers. They could have done that themselves. It was the data. WhatsApp collected data on everything. They had every message, what time it was sent, who it was sent to, demographics. All of the information was so valuable to Facebook because they could just take that, input it against all of their users, and they've just opened up their market even more. And that's all. It's just knowledge. People will buy knowledge and people buy information. So if you start collecting data, that makes you valuable. When you act on that data, that makes you more valuable than anybody else. And that's why the online workbook is so important compared to the PDF one, because I can track the data better.
Great, yes. And it's interactive too for the customer as well.
Yeah, absolutely. People can save it, they can export it. So it's not about me building websites. I'm not a threat to website developers, because when people finish the workbook at the very end, I say, right, print this out, export it, and send it to a developer. We can help you if you want us to. You can do, I've even got a course people can go through and do. I've got a course called Build Your Website. So the book's Plan Your Website. I've got a course called Build Your Website. They can go through and do it themselves. But if they don't want to, if they want to hire somebody, at least they know they can hire someone. And rather than saying, I need a website, which is what so many people say, and then the website developer turns around and says, okay, I can build that for you, but doesn't actually know what they're building, doesn't know the business, doesn't understand the customers, doesn't understand the need. It allows you to say, this is what I want, go and build it. Here's the blueprint. And so you actually end up that you put your website onto a solid foundation. And so when you start to build your empire, it doesn't fall down.
Yeah. So I think we could almost summarize this conversation to say, you don't need a website, you need the website that's going to give you business success. And that's a very, very, very different thing. Anyone can build you a website, and you know, I can build one easily. It's only when I tailor it to a customer that starts getting hard. Yeah, you know, we can literally knock out a website in half an hour. And
my daughter can build one. She's 6 years old.
Yes.
Building a website is so easy, but building a good website that's successful, that works. And the thing is, building a website is the start of the journey. So many people, they spend all this time building a website and then they go, oh, I've built it, it's done. That's the start of it. Now you've got to market that website. Now you've got to bring customers to it. That's the hard part. So it's really about, it's really about doing it, you know, it's about helping yourself and making the journey as effortless, as smooth, as easy as possible, and as scalable as possible, that you can do what it is that you want to do. Now, there are people that want a website for different reasons. You know, success can be measured in so many different, because the book originally was called How to Build a Profitable Website. But profit is just one measure of success. Some people don't base their success on financial value. Your success may be in a different way. So it's about creating success, however that looks to you. And so it's really about identifying that first in the strategy, knowing what success looks like to you, and then creating a system that you can build easily that allows you to achieve that.
Fantastic. Well, Steve, we'll wrap it up there. I'll just get you to tell people where they can go to find your book and more information about you and your business. I'll bring it up on my screen here again too. So what's your website?
So the best website for the book to go to is planyourwebsite.co.uk. My actual company, my business, is called Online Mastery Limited. So Online Mastery is like my umbrella. But then within the company, I have two products, really, really simple. There's Plan Your Website and Build Your Website. So if people go to planyourwebsite.co.uk, it'll take them here. And as a gift to your listeners, if it's okay, if you go to planyourwebsite.co.uk planyourwebsite.co.uk/free-gift. Okay, so planyourwebsite.co.uk/free-gift. What that will do is that will allow you to read the first chapter of the book. Now,
Right.
I'm very much a believer that a gift should be a gift. And if I ask for your name and email address, it's no longer a gift. It's a transaction. Albeit it's a free one, it's still a transaction. So if you go to planyourwebsite.co.uk/free-gift, you can actually read the first chapter of the book. You need to put in book there because you're on online mastery.
Okay.
So if you're on, but oh no, there you go, it's taking you there. So this is it. So I truly believe a gift should be exactly that. So if you click that button there, you get to read the first chapter of the book, and I don't even want your name or email address.
Great.
Because I truly believe that if you read this and you get the value from this, you'll want to read more.
Fantastic. And I should say, if people can't remember these details later on, if you just Google Steve Woody or Google Plan Your Website.
Yeah, Plan Your Website. It's on
come up
Amazon.
right
There's so
away.
many ways to find it. Yeah, just type into Google. If it doesn't come up, then I'm doing something wrong because I teach people SEO. Hopefully I'll show up.
For sure. Well, terrific, Steve. It's so great talking to you, and good to meet face to face. Steve's been a big help with my business in terms of helping me integrate with Infusionsoft. That's been a terrific side story. But I think for people starting out, I totally agree with Steve. Getting the plan right before you begin is essential, and thinking about a business goal rather than, how do I get a website online. That's easy. That's a solved problem. And not a problem you need to try and figure out. You need instead to figure out how you're going to grow your business, and a website can be part of that. So grab the book and learn some more. Thanks again, Steve, and look forward to speaking to you further.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Awesome. Bye, mate.